Hi, welcome. I'm Wendy Duff, and I have the great honor to be the Dean of the Faculty of Information. And I also have the opportunity to welcome you all here today. And I'm assuming that everybody in this room is interested in hearing more about our Masters of Information program. Great. Our Masters of Information program this week is made up of 7 concentrations. But next week, it's going to be made up of 8 concentrations. So, just as we're getting ready, how many people here are interested in archives and records management? My area specialty is archives and records management, not that I'm allowed to be biased. And how many people here are interested in culture and technology? Couple? And that's quite often that it's not as popular as the programs, the concentrations that have specific professions connected to it. How many here are interested in critical information policy studies? Okay, a few. Knowledge management and information management. And Professor Chen Wei-Chu just walked in, who is one of our lead professors in this area. So how many people here are interested in library and information science? Often it is one of the more popular. How many in information systems and design? Great. User experience design? Wow. Olivier, sitting at the back, will be speaking very soon about our user experience design program. And now I'm trying to think of if I forgot any. Anybody here for a concentration I didn't mention? There is a general program for students that don't want to specialize in one. And next week, our new program will be human-centered data science. So it's been approved at all levels, and we have one last approval, and that's our faculty council meeting next Thursday. So if you want to know more about that, you can also ask us. Our faculty has its roots within the library field. We are more than 90 years old and started that way. But over the years, we've changed and modified because the world of information has changed dramatically. And as we see, right now, our world appears to be a data-driven world. A world with technologies, including artificial intelligence and machine learning. Information professionals will play an even more important role across all sectors of society, including one not traditionally associated with information. While the dramatic technological changes of the past few decades have provided a taste of what the future holds, the expert consensus is that the most radical consequences of what will happen will remain ahead of us. The combination of unprecedented computational power and vast data repositories, technology, and information will produce far deeper and more disruptive social, political, economic, and personal changes, the person part, that we've seen so far. And at the iSchool, we see ourselves as studying and working and teaching in a triad of people, information, and technology. And if you look across our various programs and concentrations, there's a wide variety of interests that you'll find among our student body and among our faculty. We have faculty with PhDs in English, computer science, anthropology, and the whole variety. Come on in, there's lots of room up here, guys. But what we all are interested in is how information and people and technology that we're dealing with in moving forward. At the same time, our faculty is one that we have this interdisciplinary bridge that builds on technical expertise in engineering and computer science. Oh, I forgot engineering. Long-standing strengths in libraries, archives, and museums, and the social, political, and cultural perspective in the arts, the humanities, and social sciences. Our faculty members and students are trained to look beyond technology and algorithms to consider the social context in which they operate. We strive to craft practices, policies, organizations, and systems that can and will be held accountable in a world becoming even more dependent on algorithms. There's still some more seats up here and some over here. And automation. Ultimately, we use our unique perspective to try to discover the best ways to create a collaborative, progressive, multicultural information society of enduring social and cultural values. And so that, what you will find if you do come here, that though you may have a specific interest, you will also find lots of commonality across. You will find other students here interested in very similar things. But you'll find one of the great things about our classroom is that breadth of perspective and diversity in all that we talk about and study. And some of you, the vast majority of you, are probably coming to get a particular position, a job, a career, yes, in a particular field that you're interested in. But, you may find that you come in with one idea and that will change. We also have a new co-op program, and you'll hear more about that. But before we do any of that, I'm going to hand you over to Professor Chung-Wei Tu, the director. Oh, and you know what I wasn't doing? I wasn't moving forward. I was going to talk about the MI program. And I'll see you in a few minutes when I talk about archives and record management.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the iSchool. I'm serving as the MI Program Director for this year. So I have the privilege of doing the impossible, trying to do the impossible, which is to give you an overview of the MI program in less than 5 minutes. Well, let me start by saying that the MI program that you see today is the result, the combination, if you like, of many rounds of improvement, of refinement. To my mind, the design of the MI program has been guided by two important principles. The first is that the MI program should give our students the kind of well-rounded professional education that will put our students, you, in a strong position to pursue the information careers that you want to pursue. We also believe that that kind of well-rounded professional education requires not only just engaging with theory, learning practical skills, but also acquiring some of the values, some of the sensibilities that make up the responsible information professional. The second guiding principle is that the MI program should try to give our students, should try to give you a deeper understanding of the complex issues, the complex problems that we are facing today as a result of the changing relationships with information and technology that the society is struggling with. So we believe that the information professional today not only has to be professional, proficient in practice, but also critically aware and also socially responsible. We've had some feedback from our employers, of our graduates, and the feedback has been positive. They value our approach, they value our graduates because they see in our graduates a combination of two things: a deep professional preparation that is combined with a broad understanding of the social, ethical, and political concerns that, once again, every organization has to grapple with. Let me now try to give you a big picture overview of the MI program. Essentially, there are two ways that you can complete the MI program: by following the concentration pathway or by following the general program pathway. The concentration pathway offers 7 predefined concentrations that reflect the strengths of our faculty. These concentrations are archives and records management, critical information policy studies, culture and technology, information systems design, knowledge management, information management, library information science, and user experience design. In the afternoon, as we proceed, you will hear that many of these concentrations, in fact, complement each other. And many of our students do, in fact, take 2 concentrations. They decide to specialize and graduate with 2 specializations. So that's a thought worth keeping in mind. The other pathway is the general program pathway, which allows you to basically design your own program of study. You would do this if you think that your interests cut across several of our concentrations. So essentially in this pathway, you have a chance to typically design your own program of study by identifying, selecting elective courses from the other concentrations. Whichever pathway you choose, there are a number of options available to you. Just highlight 3 of them. The first is the co-op option. This option allows you to work full-time in a paid position for 2 terms and at the same time earn academic credit. The second option is a collaborative specialization option. So you have, this option allows you to further specialize, if you like, in one of 7 collaborative specialization options that we participate in the school. For example, the book and history program, the environmental studies program, or the knowledge media design program. And finally, there is the thesis option. The thesis option this option allows you to carry out an extended research project from start to finish. You get to plan, to scope the project, carry it out. And you get to choose a topic that you are interested in with the help and advice of a faculty supervisor. The thesis research itself is done in the 2nd year of the program, of the MI program, and is equivalent to taking 4 of the 16 courses you would need to complete the MI program. So it's a very attractive program. It's a very valuable program for those of you who wish to experience the process of carrying out a full-scale research project. I think you can see that our MI program offers a tremendous amount of flexibility, a tremendous amount of choice that would also, in turn, open up doors for you to a wide array of information careers. I'm sure you want to hear more about each of these options, and I think now this is a good time to turn over back to Wendy, who's going to introduce the archives and records management.
Thanks, Chenwei. Right, so I'm going to take off my dean hat and put on my archives and records management hat. In our lives, we depend on records always. Many of you right now are creating records as you're writing down notes and creating records as memory aids. But you also probably have a driver's license or a birth certificate or a SIM card, which gives you certain rights and obligations, right? It allows you to show that perhaps you're a Canadian citizen or a citizen of a different nation. It provides lots of evidence that at various times in your life you may need. So records play these various roles. And in the field of archives and records management, we're interested in how can we manage records so that across time, from the moment they're created, and whether they're created on paper, handwritten, typewritten, or the other kind of records that you probably all created to get here, which you probably emailed. And I got to tell you, nothing is changing the archival world more than those emails. Because suddenly we have a flood of records like we have never had before. And just imagine keeping track of Trump's tweets. Because those also are records, believe it or not. But in our field, in archives and records management, we look at an integrated whole. From the moment a record is created to whether it is destroyed because it's seen as not needed. You tear up your records, maybe you tear up your notes, you delete your emails, or whether or not what you have is of such historical significance that we will keep them for generations, or what we see for perpetuity, because they will shed light on decisions that are made on our society and a whole breadth. So in our program, all students must take, who come, some students want to work in records management, which is the term that we use for people that work in organizations and hospitals and universities, and they keep and manage the records, to make sure that if you come here, your transcript and proof that you actually got your master's will still be here 100 years from now. Or whether or not you're interested predominantly in historical archives, as we see, and whether that is manuscripts such as the wonderful Leonard Cohen, Margaret Atwood, and a wide variety of amazing records that are next door at the Fisher Rare Book Library, or whether it's administrative records, the residential schools, the TRC. Records are these most exciting things, and that people don't even realize how phenomenal they are and the power that they have. So with our students that are interested in the records management slate or would like to work in an organization, often they will take, as Chenwei was talking about, jointly with knowledge management, because there's a close connection. In fact, in those two, each of our concentrations have 5 required courses, except library and information science. And 3 of the 5 overlap between knowledge management and archives and records management. And for those that are more interested in the historical aspect, they might be interested in a collaborative specialization, such as book history, or and rare books, or library science, or a whole variety. We also have a combined program with our museum studies program, and often students interested in the more historical aspect. So the one other thing I'd just like to say before, I will be upstairs to talk about the actual requirements and how to navigate it. When people think about archives, often they come because they think, oh, it's history and they like history. But archives are really all about the future. We decide today, how can we ensure that records in the future will be trustworthy? And is there ever been a better time when that has been more important? Is it reliable? Is it truthworthy? Has that record been changed? Was it that White House film where they doctored it? So all of those, and it's also what records of today, of all the 1,000 things we create, do we need to preserve, right? So we all keep our baby pictures. And also, how does it change when we move into this digital world? So now that all your photographs are digital, how will preserving that change? So but again, it's to look at what do we need in the future to understand our society, or to make sure when there's a lawsuit, we have the records that prove we did what we said we did. So, and again, I'll talk a little more about this upstairs. Every of the concentrations are wonderful, but I can tell you, you never have a boring day if you're an archivist or records manager. And now I'm going to hand you over to Alan, who's going to tell you other culture and technology and how exciting that is.
Hi, everybody. Wendy's a tough act to follow, but I'm doing my best. I've been hanging out with archivists since I came here 10 years ago. I think I'm slowly turning into one. It happens. It's a lot of fun. So hi, my name is Alan Gailey. I'm the liaison for the Culture and Technology concentration. I'm also the director of the Book History and Print Culture Collaborative Specialization. That was one of those collaborative programs that's on our highly complex slide here, which I think we give course credit, actually, if you understand the slide by the end of your degree. Perhaps we will. I'll talk a little bit about the Culture and Technology concentration first, and then I'll say a little bit about the collaborative specialization I direct, but also what is a collaborative specialization, because we have 9 of them here. So to start with, let me ask you guys a question. Who here has recently interacted with an artificial intelligence of any kind? That really well. Okay, a few hands. Has anybody here been involved in the design of an artificial intelligence? Okay, I see a sort of hand. Interesting. Okay, a few hands. Who here has seen an AI depicted in film, television, comic books, progressive rock operas, anything? Okay, more hands up there. Okay, that's why we have the Culture and Technology concentration. It's because when we're dealing with technological change, in the world that we're living with today, that's always happening in some sort of cultural context. Technology doesn't exist in some nebulous realm detached from the world around us, neither does culture. And those two terms, culture and technology, are things that actually at the University of Toronto have a tradition of being combined thanks to Marshall McLuhan, who is a great technology media studies scholar who's worked here in many decades ago. If you've never heard of Marshall McLuhan, you've probably heard the phrase, "the medium is the message," which is kind of one of his phrases that got detached from him in many ways. So our concentration is part of the tradition of media studies and the study of culture and technology together that he helped to establish, although a lot has happened in that field and in the world since he was doing his work. And I think the way we look at it in this concentration is that it's the trickiest term in the name of that concentration, or the trickiest part of it is actually the ampersand, because it suggests that these two things could be separate when in fact they're not. So in the concentration, what people are studying are things like the future of the book, remix culture, design, critical making, maker spaces, the places, the sites, and the context in which culture and technology are affecting each other reciprocally in interesting ways. In the course I'm teaching right now, which is the foundational course in that concentration, we start by reading in different theoretical areas. We're reading some anthropology, we're reading science and technology studies, media studies, sound studies. In fact, last week we actually read 3 literary works. We read a Sherlock Holmes story, a Stephen King short story about a haunted word processor, and we read a Cory Doctorow story about surveillance. And next week we're actually going to be watching Spike Jonze's film, Her, with Joaquin Phoenix and Scarlett Johansson, the voice of Scarlett Johansson as an artificial intelligence. This is because there are many ways to study culture and technology. You'll hear from my colleagues in some other concentrations: computer science, design, HCI, UXD, the social sciences. They come at it in some very, very important ways. What we bring to it is, I'd say, a humanities angle on it. We look at culture as something that it's like the water in which we swim, and we don't even have a word for water, as the old joke goes. If fish had language, they wouldn't have a word for water. Culture is very similar to that. It is something, the representations that we come to know technology through are a powerful force in shaping the experiences of those technologies in our lives. So actually I wanted to pick up a thread that Wendy mentioned, which is the concern for the future. And one of the phrases I always liked links culture and technology to the next thing I'll talk about, which is book history, is the idea that we enter the future backwards. That is, we enter the future looking at the past, guided by our understanding of the past, but that means that the things we're actually encountering in the future are sometimes a surprise. So those of us in the book history and print culture program, in that specialization, we study something that whose history is measured not in centuries, not in decades, but measured in millennia. The oldest object I brought into a classroom in one of my book history classrooms is actually about 3,700 years old. It was a Babylonian cuneiform tablet, which we have at the Fisher Library here. So the book history and print culture program it's a little different from what I was just talking about, but it's an example of a collaborative specialization which is offered not just by the Faculty of Information, but by a number of other units around the University of Toronto. We have collaborative specializations because there's some topics that no one department, no one faculty can or should offer on their own. These are topics that are interdisciplinary, they're interdivisional. So book history and print culture is where I come from. We have other programs in aging, palliative care, addiction studies, women's studies, Jewish studies. There are actually, I think, 47 of these programs at the University of Toronto. We at the iSchool are involved in 9 of them and counting. What these actually mean in terms of your experience is, well, if you decide to do a collaborative specialization, you can do any one of them in addition to a concentration. It doesn't usually work if you try to do 2 concentrations and a specialization, but one of them and a concentration can work fine. They don't add any extra courses to your degree. It happens in the space of your electives for your normal concentration. And usually it involves taking at least 1, maybe 2 courses that are specifically for that concentration. So the courses for book history and print culture, I teach them regularly. We teach them in the Thomas Fisher Rare Book Library. It's a destination for field trips, but I like to think of the whole course as one big field trip, where we go to the best rare book library of its kind in this country, one of the very best in the world, and that's our classroom. So in that particular concentration, we look at the material transmission of knowledge through the physical forms that they've taken, not just books, but ephemera, newspapers from the 19th century and 18th century, periodicals, digital books, ebooks. The future of the book is as much our concern as its history. So anyway, there's a couple of the things that I work on. I'm happy to talk with anybody about culture and technology or about collaborative specializations, especially book history after, and I look forward to talking to you all later. Thanks. Yes, is Jenny? Good. Okay, let me know right on my table.
We're supposed to advance some of this stuff. Okay. Hello, my name is Olivier, and I'm the concentration liaison for the UXD concentration. And I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what this concentration is about, and I'll be available later today. UXD is really like when Wendy talked about our school being the intersection of people, technology, and information. Really, we were dealing with the people component and how people interact with technology. So the user experience design program is in its third year this year. It's our fastest growing concentration in the iSchool. We started with 32 students 2.5 years ago, and now we have 110 students in the program. So it is growing very rapidly. So I'm sure many of you over here have had interaction at some point in time with technology, and all you felt like doing is shaking the damn thing, throwing it away, or like stepping on it and making sure that it would never bug you ever again. So this is probably those are probably examples of negative experiences, experiences that you've had interacting with all kinds of different parts of whether they're analog or digital type of machinery, technology. And then obviously these negative experiences really influence how you think about these pieces of technology and this information. What we try to do in our concentration is design positive experience. It's trying to look at the human factors behind how people interact with technology and information, and then design for positive user experiences. Now, UX is much more popular these days than it used to be 15, 20 years ago when I started in the field, because it's becoming a huge differentiating factor. If you grew up in the mid-1990s, or late 80s, early 90s, there was only really one piece of software to do any given thing. So there was a one word processor, one spreadsheet, a couple of versions here and there, one or two operating systems. So people, to a sense, did not have a choice to cope with bad user experience. If the software was programmed this way, and that was the only piece of software that you could use to do X, then you learn how to cope with it. And humans are smart, we're adaptive creature. We will learn even the worst system ever. Talk to the people who work at Best Buy and all these like black screen and green text type of computers, and you'll see what I mean. But things have changed, and especially with the rise of the app and the whole idea that now when you go on an app store, you can have many different versions of many different pieces of software to do the same thing. So you want to monitor your health, right? You go on the app store, you say health monitoring app. How many different versions you're going to get? 50, 60, maybe 100, maybe 200, right? So you're going to look at the reviews, you're going to download one, try it. If it doesn't work out for you, if the UX, the first appreciation that you have for this app, or the overall user experience is no good, you're going to toss it away, you're going to download the next one, and you're going to keep going. So companies are caught up to that, obviously. It's becoming a huge differentiating factor. The first experiences that we have with a piece of software will often be a make or a break. Right? So this is what we learn in our concentration, is how to design for all these different kinds of experiences, and how to design software, and also all kinds of different pieces of technology to interact with information, to retrieve data. So we have lots of students, as I mentioned. We have students who have won all kinds of prizes, all kinds of design competition. I really encourage my students to go out, participate in hackathon and all kinds of design challenges around town, and get their names out there. Okay. let's talk about like some of the details. Our program is really a mix of practice and theory. So I just don't do theory like all lecture long. We have a brand new UX studio that just opened up in the fall. It's on the first floor. Anybody who's interested in seeing it, I can take you after to see it after the session is done in the library later. And we do a lot of studio-based learning. We do a lot of hands-on, lots of design, lots of sticky notes, markers, whiteboarding, et cetera, So it really is a concentration where you get your hands dirty. Like you cannot learn how to design something if you don't try to design it, if you don't iterate on it, if you don't test it. So we have 2 courses in the fall and 2 courses in the winter. Information architecture and fundamentals of UX in the fall, and user interface design and user-centered information systems in the winter. And then some of our students will go into co-op. I have to say UX is a very popular co-op option. Lots of students in UX want to get into co-op. Not everybody does, but it's a very popular option. So we have students right now at Bosch, Autodesk, Ontario Digital Services, FreshBooks, CIBC, UHN, Tribal Scale, TTC, Tangerine, Deloitte Digital, Click Health. So we've had a fairly good success rate at placing some of our co-op students all over the GTA, in fact, some international as well. For those of you who do not go into co-op after your first year, then in the fall of your second year, you can start looking at second concentrations or electives, right? And then in the winter of the last semester that you take here, which is year 2, semester number 4, then we have a course on experience journey mapping and on sort of end-to-end. We call it more experience design as opposed to user experience design. So it touches areas of service designs as well. So it's really end-to-end experience. We also have thesis options in UX. We don't have a lot of students who do the thesis options, but there are a few. And we also have practicum projects that people can do. For example, if you don't get into the co-op option, then you have the options to do a practicum project. Finally, I just want to say one quick thing. For the students who are not considering UX as a concentration, I would still encourage you to look at our program maybe for 1 or 2 courses, because the way I sell this program in the school is either as a career or as a toolbox. So if you want to be a UX designer, if you want to make it a career, that's fine. We can train you for this. We can help you get a job in this area. But if you're in library, in archive, in museum, library, archive, museum, galleries, you are likely to interact with digital technologies. I mean, there's a lot more position these days on UX librarianship. You see these jobs popping up all over the place. Museums are trying to create experiences for their patron, how to design the galleries, how to design the exhibits, how to make sure that people have a good experience when they go through the museum. And archive, well, we know what the movement is in archive right now, right? It's digitalization. Archives are being digitalized year after year after year. So the government, and there's lots more to do. There's years of work to do to digitalize a lot of archives that we have right now in paper form or in analog form. So all of these concentration also have an element of user experience and where people interact with all kinds of different digital system and information. So that could be a good toolbox for you to have in your back pocket, right, if you're in one of those concentration. So if you have any question, I'll see you in about 20 minutes or so in the Inform later on. Thank you.
Hello. Oh, that's nice. A packed room. It's always good. So, hi, I'm Christoph Becker, and I'm the liaison, as we call it, for the information systems and design concentration. So, information systems and design will essentially enable you to design information systems, in a range of fields, and that's a broad range of fields, whether that's corporate finance or government or healthcare or libraries and archives or museums. Or it's a big data startup or social media. It's obviously a wide range. So if you want to shape how information technology is designed in business, in government, in libraries and archives and museums, in healthcare and so on, what you need to understand is both the technical aspects of information technology, but also the social context, people's needs and wants and organizational business drivers and incentives, and policies and regulation and legal environment and all that. And you need to understand both of them at the same time and bring them together. If you think of, for example, the smart city that Sidewalk Labs is developing together with Waterfront Toronto. If you want to understand and shape what is happening there, you need to understand the infrastructure, you need to understand the space, you need to understand the technical internet infrastructure, but also the devices, the way that they work together, the Internet of Things. But then you will also have to understand the needs and wants of the people who are going to live and work there, the organizational business drivers of the companies that are going to be there, and everything else in that policy context of urban development. So ISND provides you with the concepts and methods, the tools and the perspectives and the analytical frameworks to navigate the social and the technical in this space and make sense of both and negotiate that. And so we'll teach you how IT systems work, we'll teach you some programming, we'll teach you databases, but then we'll also talk about how to place these technologies in a social context, how to analyze the organizational context and design and understand what should those systems achieve, what should be their goals, what should be their requirements, and how do you begin to design on a high level their system architecture. And so we'll do all that based also on a socially conscious, ethical basis, and that's really one of the things that makes this program at this place also so unique. I'd say even that there's probably no better place in Canada or even North America to study this. It's easy to say that, but there are really two reasons for me to say that. The first reason is that all of us who teach in this program have a PhD in computing, but our interests go way beyond computing. We're much more interested in the end, rather than just in algorithms. We're interested in how we can design those algorithms for human development, for sustainable development, rather than just make the most efficient algorithm, for example. And then second, if you consider, so we'll teach you how those things work. We know how those things work, but we care more about how that works in the context of people. And then if you place all this together in the context of the rest of the faculty, with user experience design, with libraries and archives and museums, with knowledge management, with organizational context, then you see that when you combine ISD with your specific domain interests, you really get a quite amazing package. And the other thing about this, I would say, is also that there's probably no better time to study it. When you think of what is happening, software technology, AI, big data, wearable devices, all those things, they're not going anywhere. Now, what is changing very rapidly is the technology itself, the algorithms, the devices, of course. But what doesn't change so quickly is how we can make sense of navigating the social and the technical and actually design those systems. That doesn't change that quickly. And that while the computer science department is churning out computer science graduates, the need for those to work with others who understand how those algorithms can actually be designed and how they should be designed is greater than ever, and it's only growing as AI and everything else is growing. So what are you going to do in those 2 years? You're going to complete a set of courses that include some technical foundations. They include programming, computational thinking, databases, and modeling and analyzing business processes. And then they move towards understanding requirements in social environments, project-based courses. There's one that I teach where the entire course is a project where you define requirements and develop a high-level architectural design of a new system. And that's all based in teams, and you figure out yourself which system that should be. And so you move from these technical foundations towards placing those technical foundations in a context. There's various project-based options to then explore this in more depth, either in a thesis or in a full-year, second-year project. And so quite a few of the courses involve team-based work, like the one I just mentioned. And so when you graduate in 2021, that is, your bridging of technical and social knowledge will be quite highly valued in a lot of different spaces. So you're very well positioned to become a business analyst, a systems analyst, an information architect, or a project lead for an IT systems design project, or take another position in the big data space, for example. Some of our graduates become chief information officers, for example. But depending on how you combine this concentration, you can really spin this in a number of different ways. I always say, if you're in archives, if you're going into the ARM stream, the best thing I believe you can do is to take ISD as the second concentration, because as Olivier just mentioned, I'm sure Wendy also mentioned it, is that archives are becoming digital just as libraries are becoming digital. And the number of job offerings everywhere else is pretty much steady, but the number of job offerings in digital archives is going up. So the thing is, you don't need to come in with programming skills. It's a very often asked as a question. We'll teach you programming. If you do have an undergrad, for example, in computing, that there is some more that you can do in terms of where you want to go in depth, for example. But we have graduates coming from all kinds of different backgrounds, undergrad backgrounds. So there is the integration of introduction to programming included. And I think my time is up. So just to reiterate, I think there's no better time and place to study this. It's really about navigating the social and the technical and design and shape the future of IT. I'll be in the forum on the 5th floor for your questions in 20 minutes, I think.
Okay. I guess if I click this, here we go. All right. There we are. Good. I'm a little bit sick today, so I don't normally speak into the mic, but I think I'll do that. Hi, everyone. My name is Colin Furness. I'm an assistant professor teaching stream here at the Faculty of Information. Teaching stream faculty, just like regular research stream faculty, both we all do teaching and research. I tend to do more teaching, a little bit less research. My area is knowledge management and information management. And if that sounds like a mouthful, well, it's an earful, or at least it will be by the time I finish my 5 minutes. How many people here plan on working in an organization someday? Oh yeah, surprise, lots of you. Knowledge management and information management is therefore very important. We're very, very concerned with how information and knowledge moves through an organization. Organizations, like people, can learn, can know, but can also forget and can also be unable to use what they know. And that is a major concern for this particular area. You've all come across the term information overload, but what you've never come across is knowledge overload. And the reason for that is that there is a gigantic difference between information and knowledge. Now, if we wanted to answer that question today, well, how long do you have? Because I'm quite comfortable talking for 3 hours. I'm not going to do that. I'm not allowed, only because I'm not allowed. But if I was to boil it down to about a 10-second soundbite, I would say knowledge is in the head, information is in the environment, and there's a huge challenge in organizations to make use of vast information repositories in terms of getting it through that tiny, tiny pinhole of attention between the environment and the individual. So we're concerned with answering questions like, why do people not necessarily share information in an organization, and even if they want to, and of course sometimes they don't. What happens and why do some people hoard information when they could be sharing it? What happens when someone retires or resigns and walks out the door, taking a lot of knowledge with them? So there's some very, very important kinds of questions that we seek to answer. In terms of the information management side, we're concerned with tools, and we're concerned with techniques, things like metadata, which is one of the courses that you take. On the knowledge management side, we're very concerned with understanding the psychological and behavioral processes of how people think, how people learn, how organizations make sense of what comes to them from the environment, how they process that, how they create information, and how they get decision making done too. So there's a wide range of material that we cover. Knowledge management and information management pairs very well with archives and records management. In fact, the required courses overlap significantly. It pairs very well with LIS. It pairs very well with ISD, and certainly with UXD as well. So I like to say, and I don't have a lot to back this up, but I like to say it's everyone's favorite second concentration. It's a great first concentration too, but it plays so well with a lot of the other ones. Why? Because the centrality of organizations and workplaces in our lives and their role in dealing with information and knowledge is just so incredibly important. So our graduates tend to work in areas like in knowledge management departments, becoming chief knowledge officers, becoming knowledge managers, in some cases business analysts. There's a wide range of corporate occupations. In large organizations, there's very often internal services to deal with information provision. In small organizations, you might be the only person who can actually really wear all the hats required to get people the information and knowledge that they need. So it is a very, very versatile course of study. I could keep on going. As I say, I always like to do that. I like the sound of my own voice, but I think I'll leave it at that. I'll be upstairs on the 4th floor, along with everybody else after this. Thank you very much.
Hi, everybody. Oh, that's me. We were not sure of the sequence. Hi, everybody. My name is Nadia Kedi. I'm a faculty member here. I've been here for 18 years, never been anywhere else, just the Faculty of Information at U of T. It's a wonderful place to be as a researcher, as a faculty member, and hopefully as a student as well, and as an alumni of our program. So I'm here to talk to you about a couple of concentrations. The first one is Critical and Information Policy Studies. And the second one is Library and Information Science. And the two of them have their unique characteristics, but they also have commonalities. So it will come as no surprise to you that many of us actually wear different hats. So I am both in LIS and in CIPS, same way as you might take more than one concentration. And we get along rather well, despite very different emphasis. So let me talk to you first about Critical Information Policy Studies. What is it? It looks at the social and political and kind of policy implications of information and communication technologies in our lives. We all use smartphones, we're all connected, we will soon be living in smart cities with smart homes, we cross borders all the time as we travel. There's a lot of data that is being released about us constantly. So what we do study in the CIPS concentration is almost what I call the behind the scene of information and communication technologies, their production, their management, their access, their availability, and by whom. So what you will get after 2 years of wrestling with all the courses, the incredible range of courses that we teach at this faculty, is a better understanding of very critical and very timely issues. You just have to take up the Globe and Mail or the New York Times or whatever newspaper you read, and you will be bombarded literally by issues that relate to CIPS, to the Critical Information Policy Studies. I have a few examples for you just from the past week, whether we talk about technology humanism, whether we talk about gentrification and the coming of big headquarters like Amazon's and Google's. You may have heard of those, Cambridge Analytica, and that scandal around what also is called the Facebook follies, fake news, of course, broadband, the notion of broadband as a basic service, particularly for remote and isolated communities and people who don't have access. So looking at broadband even at to the internet as a basic human right. What would it be like if we thought about broadband or internet as a basic human right that everybody has a right to access? Smart cities and the whole debates we see right now over Sidewalk Toronto. A couple of key people in the past few weeks have resigned over issues of data. They were not comfortable with transparency over how Google handles the data, the public data that is collected about us in the city. So these are all aspects that we study in this concentration. Data discrimination, you may have heard about the GDPR that is going now, which replaces the right to be forgotten in Europe. Privacy, surveillance, diversity in the technological sector. So this gives you a sense about the range of issues that relate to how we deploy technologies in our everyday lives, in our workplaces, and what are the implications. So it gives you a vocabulary, it gives you a set of tools and tactics to think about that, to make sense of it, to think about participation in this debate, whose voices are included and whose voices are excluded from these debates. We learn to craft policy brief, we learn to unpack reports and documents and white papers, and really to understand what is at stake here, really, whose interests are being advanced, what is happening to the public interest. And so you will see from what you've heard from my colleagues and what we will talk about in the LIS concentration, that this notion of public interest and social justice is an ethos, is a set of values that really are carried over through our program here, through our Masters of Information. So we do tend to take on a slightly public interest as social justice take when we look at surveillance and privacy and some of these policy issues. And it's reflected in where our graduates actually work. They tend to work in the intellectual property offices, as privacy officers. They tend to work as in all kinds of policy analysis capacities in all kinds of organizations, from the private sector to the public sector to the government. So these are people who are, interested in the policy side of things and are really kind of advancing agendas. I can tell you more about that, but in addition to courses that are being taught by us in the faculty here, we have a number of colleagues from UT Mississauga. They have the 2 campuses, and UT Scarborough. And for example, this year, courses you could take as part of CIPS included platform politics, digital labor, critical perspective on social media, or feminist perspective on technology, just this term. So there's a range of issues you can look at from different angles. I think I'm running out of my 5 minutes, and I'll be available in 4:17 after this session to talk to you about CIPS in a bit more details. What happened to LIS? Do you want to hear about library and information science a little bit? Yeah. It tends to be one of our most popular concentrations, as it turns out. Like what Colin said earlier, LIS is actually a fantastic concentration to marry or to add on to another concentration. Whether it's user experience design, which within the context of libraries, it's a very sought after specialization in libraries right now. Whether it's KMIM, knowledge management, information management, whether it's CMT, whether it's information systems and design, there's great benefit in really coupling in some way the LIS concentration with one of these others. And why, you will say? The reason is because libraries are changing. They have changed. Every once in a while, when we teach the foundations course in LIS, we ask the question, how many people, why are you here in LIS? And people often will say, well, I love to read, I like to be quiet, in a corner, I love that. And I say, you know what? You'll be surprised, because the profile of the librarian has changed. It is not that very shy, reserved person who knows everything and who loves books and reading. You still do need to love books and reading, but you need to love people. You really need to be, you are a public-facing profession. There are a lot of things that people expect from libraries now that may not have been the case even just 20 years ago. The library is a space. The library is a place. People may not come for your collection. People may not come for reference. People may come for other things because they like to study in the space, because they can meet other people in the space, because they can organize meeting in the space, because they can expect to find tools that they can borrow in your space. They can expect to make things in maker spaces and Fab Labs. They expect a range of services, professional services from you, not just an answer to a factual question. So my point is, what we find increasingly in the profession is there's a lot of interest from employers. We have people coming to our classes all the time from Toronto Public Library and Markham Public Library and LSC, sometimes Libraries and Archives Canada, and they all say, we need graduates who are good with data, who can actually take on our circulation data or take on some of the data we generate and turn that into better programming, make more a more effective use of our spaces, of our programs, get a better understanding of who our populations are that we serve and how we can reach people we don't actually see at the library. So what you see is that the librarian of today is a social scientist, is a data scientist, is again, a public-facing professional who really needs to be in tune with what's going on in the editing world, who needs to know how to manage or how to deal with licensing issues for electronic journals and serials, who needs to understand basics of community engagement. How do you engage in a community? Not having to wait for people to come to a library, but really go out there, outside of the library and do things. So this is the generation of librarians and information professionals that we educate here. They love books, but they have to do a lot more than that. And again, I'm happy to talk to you about that I cannot be in 417 in another room at the same time, but you will find your way. Which room is it? Sorry.
So LIS is in 520.
In 520.
In that room.
Okay, so if you want to learn more about LIS, 520 is where you want to be. Thank you very much, and good luck, everybody.
Okay, great. Thank you all very much. So next is going to be the Q&A info fair section of it, portion of the day. So on your schedules, you should have the room locations of where all the concentrations are. We have students and faculty there that you can talk to. And then we have 2 admission sessions this afternoon. So you don't have to come to both. You can choose one. They'll both be in this room. So one of them is happening at 1:45 and the other one is happening at 2:30. So you can choose whichever times you want to go to. And then go up into the Inforum, 4th and 5th floors of the Inforum and talk to the students and the faculty members from the different concentrations. Okay, thank you.
If I went to the admission info thing this morning, is it the same? It is same. Okay.
I'm just trying to like.
I'm pretty sure I did it.
So do we give them a couple minute break and then start? Yeah. Has it been a couple minutes or a few more?
Maybe a few more minutes.
My jacket.
Not more people than this morning.
Yeah.
The ice up here.
Yeah. We had a really good group of questions. A couple had bachelor's completed, and there was a couple of there was one woman who's getting library diploma. There's one with Japanese stores, one with engineering science degree, two with computer science. They were amazing mix. It was really cool. Yeah, it was exactly what we were kind of hoping for.
Yeah, great.
That's loud. Last call for a break here, and then we'll go ahead and get started with the admissions component. Right.
Do I need to put on any sort of thing?
All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started, just so you guys can get into the information session component, where if you have additional questions about your concentrations, you're able to follow up with those questions. My name is Stephanie Rose. I'm our Assistant Dean Registrar and Student Services here in the Faculty of Information.